Hi, I'm Connor Jones.
I'm Micah Tomasella.
And this is Culture Brief, a Denison-informed podcast where we navigate the constant stream of top stories and news, politics, sports, pop culture, technology, and everything else happening in culture. And we're doing it all from a Christian perspective. And Micah, we've been off for 2 weeks. It's good to be back. A lot has happened since then. I mean, Stranger Things is back. Lane Kiffin's at LSU now.
That's right.
There's so much that's happened, and politically too. You want to just give us a breakdown of kind of what we're going to be covering?
Absolutely, Connor. It is great to be back. We have missed you, our loyal Culture Brief audience. So we're going to be doing a foreign policy roundup today. Connor's going to take us through that. Just a lot of different things internationally, abroad, and here stateside. And then I'm going to take us through how the American worker has evolved over the last 250 years. Next year we're coming up on 250 years as a country. And so we're going to talk about that. And then we also got a really compelling message from one of our listeners that we're going to share with you. We've got all those things and so much more. So let's jump into The Brief.
The Brief. Okay, Micah, you mentioned it. Let's start up top with some foreign policy stuff. There's so much happening around the globe, and the U.S. Specifically has its fingers in all of it. They are somewhat a part of some of these stories. They're trying to negotiate peace deals, all that, and this has been the case. And we've talked about this all year, 2025, whether it's Israel or Thailand and Cambodia. But specifically, the big one right now that's gaining a lot of attention is obviously Ukraine and Russia. Yeah. We've talked about this all year long. It's been like peace talks here, Trump and Putin meeting, and it doesn't feel like anything has really ever come out that's been concrete. So we're now at the closest position to that. Over the last few weeks, there's been plans presented, plans leaked to the media that, we're showing maybe the U.S. is leaning more pro-Russia. So Europe was mad. Ukraine was kind of mad. Zelensky, president of Ukraine, was kind of saying, hey, we might lose a strategic partner here in the U.S. over this whole plan. Well, it was all kind of, working through the media to try to get their position advanced. And we're now at a point where the U.S. is presenting a plan to Russia. Steve Witkoff is the U.S. envoy, and Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, also kind of an envoy. They worked in the Israel peace deal to secure that with Gaza. They are in Moscow currently as we're speaking. I think by the time this episode releases, they'll be back in Ukraine presenting what they found out in Moscow, what they landed on with the Russians out there in Moscow. They spoke with Moscow. Not with Putin directly, but with his advisors. And it sounds like they presented a 19-point deal that was shrunk down from a 28-point deal from 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Trump had initially said, I want that 28-point deal to be agreed upon with Ukraine before Thanksgiving. Well, Ukraine did not agree upon that 28-point deal because they were saying it was not remotely close enough to what they were willing to give in on, which was, it was saying that Russia gets quite a bit of Ukrainian territory. It was going to shrink the Ukrainian military, but what it would do is require Russia to take $100 billion of their frozen assets and give it to Ukraine for reconstruction in Ukraine. So there was some back and forth there. Ultimately, it kind of all happened at a really bad time for Ukraine, at least for Volodymyr Zelensky, the president, because his chief of staff, at the same time these negotiations were going on, basically had to resign due to corruption charges, which got a lot of people just talking, and a lot of Americans upset because it felt like maybe, we're helping this corrupt country. This is the number 2 guy in Ukraine, had to resign because he was caught up in this embezzlement scheme, or he's alleged to have been caught up in it. But he had to resign because it was just in the middle of all these big negotiations for peace. And, he was considered like a power broker and was one of the top negotiators for Zelensky in these talks. Micah, it just feels like we're still at a stalemate. We're hopefully getting closer, but I don't know if you have any other thoughts on kind of what's going on there. But so far, we've been talking about this for months and nothing has really advanced.
Yeah, I mean, we're just kind of in wait and see mode. We've talked a lot about, Trump's promises on the campaign trail to bring peace. And, to give him credit where it's due, there have been a lot of peace deals put in place, definitely like in a lot of smaller countries, but also what's going on in Gaza right now seems to be humming along, not perfectly, but it's still in place. And so, but really the biggest domino is the war against Russia and Ukraine. This thing's been going on for nearly 4 years. And so it's truly, it would be a very tall task. And it seems like they're close, but it just seems, like we're in wait and see mode. But so far, I have no reason to believe that there isn't going to be something figured out and everybody's going to have to compromise something.
Correct. Yeah, I would say the Russians are very much so adamant that they don't have to compromise much because they believe that they are winning the war. They have taken this territory; it belongs to them. And the Ukrainians would say, "Well, no, you entered our sovereign territory," and Europe would say the same. And the Europeans are mad because they think that the U.S. is kind of siding more so with Russia in that. And I don't know. There's a lot there. So keep tabs on that. We'll obviously keep tabs. And if we get a deal landed, we will come back with all the details on that. And we are praying and hoping for a deal there. I mean, the death and destruction just continues to rage on. As you said, Micah, almost 4 years in. Okay, here stateside, on top of all of that, we've had quite a few stories as well. Obviously, the very tragic story of the attack just 2 blocks from the White House on November 26th, the day before Thanksgiving. An Afghani man came and attacked 2 National Guard members, shot them and ambushed them. One of those specialists, Sarah Beckstrom, she was age 20, did unfortunately pass away on Thanksgiving Day. And then the other man, Staff Sergeant Andrew Wolf, who is age 24, is still in critical condition in the hospital, but is apparently on the road to recovery, which is really good news. And we're praying that he does fully recover, right? That has just sparked so much, obviously just mourning for our lost soldier and her sacrifice, which is really sad. And just 2 blocks from the White House, right in our Capitol. It's just not great. But it's also caused a lot of backlash because people are like, okay, this guy came over from Afghanistan right after the fall of Kabul when the U.S. pulled out. This was in 2021 under Joe Biden. He pulled out all the U.S. forces. It was kind of a disastrous pullout.
Yeah, that was the one that was like terrible, right?
Terrible.
Golly. Yeah.
Yeah, reminiscent of Saigon in the 70s, right? So that happened, but what the U.S. did was they launched Operation Allies Welcome, which brought a lot of Afghani people with the U.S. to our states because they helped the U.S. during the war in Afghanistan, whether they were translators or operatives, whatever it was. That was about 190,000 Afghani refugees came over during that operation.
I didn't realize it was that much. Wow.
It is a lot of people. And because of that, now there's people on the right and even really honestly just in the government who are saying, well, we need to send a lot of them back. We need to deport. These people were not properly vetted. They came over in this like emergency situation because they would have been killed by the Taliban had it been found out they were helping the U.S. Right. So there are reasons to bring them over. But now a lot of government officials are saying they were not properly vetted. And that includes Kristi Noem, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security Secretary, right? She has even recommended a full travel ban on other countries that are similar to Afghanistan. She's calling them third world countries. Obviously, that's a popular term. I don't know what we would classify in the U.S. government as third world. I think they're releasing a list of what these countries will be, but they have stopped all immigration from Afghanistan because of this. I just want to point out one thing. I read this great article from the Free Press by an author named Elliot Ackerman. It was titled, "I served in the CIA's 0 units in Afghanistan. So did the Afghan man accused of savagely shooting 2 National Guard members the day before Thanksgiving. We cannot use this horrific act to malign all of our Afghan allies." And he's right. I think a lot of people are upset because there have been 4 to 5 Afghani nationals that have been arrested since just last October with terroristic threats. And then this guy actually pulled off the terrorist attack on these National Guard members. And so, yeah, that caused a wave of like just questioning. Do we want these people here in this country? And I think this guy brings up a good point. You cannot pin all Afghanis as the same kind of mentality or radical Islamic ideology as this guy had that attacked these National Guard members, right? You can't put that on all 190,000. But, you know, a lot of people would say, why risk it at all? Why not? Why have them here? Or do we need to do a deeper vetting process? Do they all need to go through interviews? All of that. So, Micah, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, so when it comes to the Afghani nationals and those that helped us abroad, I can definitely understand the argument that, you know, if they helped us, I'm sure from the beginning they were assured some sort of asylum if they were to help, because obviously if they would have stayed, they would have been in grave danger. I'm not sure if I totally agree with that author's point from the Free Press, because isn't that author an American? Hey, I served in this unit and I'm an American. I served in this unit and I'm from Afghanistan. I just don't believe that it's a 1-for-1 argument. They're from Afghanistan. They served in this, so they're good. I'm not sure if it's a 1-for-1 because, you know, that they grew up in that environment and then you have this author who is an American themselves. I just think it's important that we draw a line and we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater per se and say, all Afghan nationals are dangerous, and so they must all be deported. I definitely think that that's too far. But I definitely would agree with there should be more proper vetting of anybody who comes here, specifically from places that tend to have popular ideologies of not loving America so much. I mean, I think it is a government's duty to protect its citizens too. So it is a balance.
Yeah, it's a very tough balance. How do you protect your citizens? How do you also protect the people who helped your nation and would be killed in that country if they found, if the enemy found out they had served with the United States? There's a lot of questions there. But something happened between that guy coming over from Afghanistan and today that radicalized him. And it sounds like it's happening with others as well. So hopefully that stops. We'll continue to pray for just that situation in the family that lost a loved one and the man who is still in the hospital recovering. Also, on top of all of this, we still have a massive military buildup going on in the Caribbean. They are sending more and more aircraft to Puerto Rico to station up. We've got an aircraft carrier. The USS Gerald Ford is now in the Caribbean. All of this is placing pressure on Venezuela, but it's also part of these drone strikes that are happening on drug vessels. We've been talking about this since September. September 2nd was the first attack. And since then, we have seen 21 strikes on drug vessels that have killed 82 people that are considered by the U.S. government narco-terrorists because they are, saying that they're bringing all these drugs, cocaine, fentanyl, anything up to the United States. Now, a lot of people would say it's mostly fentanyl, but a lot of reporters are also starting to dig into this, and they're discovering that these drug boats are mostly carrying cocaine, which the U.S. has said that they are aiming for fentanyl deliveries because fentanyl is so deadly and has killed hundreds of thousands of Americans over the last decade. So that's kind of the justification behind these strikes. But if they're not taking out fentanyl, it brings up questions. Congress is getting involved in all this, and now they're really starting to take a look at this because the Washington Post had an article last week about Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense. He calls himself the Secretary of War. He apparently had a strike ordered, the very first one on September 2nd. They did strike the boat, but then there were 2 survivors of the initial strike on that boat. And then a second strike hit the boat to kill the 2 remaining survivors. Now, there's been arguments about who ordered that second strike to kill the survivors. Is it a war crime to kill survivors who had no weapons and were rendered defenseless? Pete Hegseth has said it's not a war crime. He also has said that he did not order the second strike. And the White House has said that it was an admiral who ordered the second strike. Admiral Frank Bradley, they said, gave the order, and they declared at the White House that he worked well within his authority and the law, directing the engagement to ensure the boat was destroyed.
Yeah, so they're pinning it on that admiral,
Right.
on the admiral, but they're also not backing away from it. It's like, oh, the admiral did it, but we didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah, a lot of people would say,
they're
like
pinning it on him
situation.
just in case it goes sideways. The admiral did it. I think I saw something that like Pete Hegseth said he had like walked out of the room whenever that second strike was happening. No, I couldn't have ordered it. I'd already walked out of the room. So
this is what yeah, you're right. This is what Hegseth said. He said he did not personally see any survivors after the initial strike on a purported drug vessel, and that he watched the first strike live, but left before learning hours later that Bradley had made the call to sink the boat. He also said that this is called the fog of war. And he's like, you couldn't see much in these video streams, like it's flames,
the literal
smoke.
fog of war. Yeah.
Well, and the metaphorical fog of war.
Yeah.
Like there's just things like this that happen is kind of what he's saying. This is what happens in war.
So
but
we're
the
at
problem
war.
with that statement, that's the problem with the statement, according to Congress. I'm not giving my opinion on whether we're at war or not, but Congress is questioning, like, okay,
I'm not
if we're
sure
at
if we're at war or not. I don't know.
Right. Well, and
Yeah.
Congress says they all these lawmakers are like, it has to be congressional declaration of war to be a war.
So then the White House is going to say we're at war, but we're not really at war, because if we're really at war, you got to get congressional approval to be actually officially at war. So we're about as at war as you can be without congressional approval, I guess.
I suppose. Well, this is the lifelong question of like, how far can a
Very
president
interesting.
direct military orders? I mean, these drone strikes, they're being at the direction of obviously Hegseth, but more specifically, Donald Trump has given the orders to take these boats out. It was a question when Barack Obama used to order drone strikes in Yemen, right? Like, who does he have the authority to do that, or does Congress have to get involved? There's all those questions, and Congress, of course, always wants to be involved in everything. And now they're even potentially bringing up war crimes as a phrase that they're saying with this whole strike.
Yeah.
They're trying to suggest that this was potentially a war crime, which, if it is, could lead to an impeachment of Hegseth. In fact, one Democratic congressman is already putting together articles of impeachment against Hegseth. We'll see if that goes through. I doubt it will. It's still a Republican Congress, so
We'll see.
It's unlikely. All of this to say, this whole thing is also just boiling up towards Venezuela. We're on the precipice of apparently imminent attacks, potentially on land in Venezuela to take out drug facilities, maybe even the dictator Nicolas Maduro himself. But they've been talking with the White House. I don't know if they're going to make a deal of some sort to avoid getting military strikes on their land or to save Maduro's life. But right now, it's kind of at a stalemate. It's kind of at high tensions, and the U.S. Navy is just sitting right off the coast of Venezuela. The pressure is on Venezuela for sure. So we'll see what happens there. Micah, it's a lot going on. There's a lot to be concerned about. There's a lot to think about, a lot to be frustrated about. And if you're listening to this and you find yourself frustrated just with all these stories, you're probably not alone. Or if you're confused or you're just angered, you could be angered by injustices across the globe. 2 National Guardsmen just walking the streets, patrolling, getting ambushed. That's angering, right? That's frustrating.
Yeah.
People innocently being killed in Ukraine and Russia. Maybe you're even angered by drug boats being struck by the U.S. military. I don't know. Whatever it is, it's all reasonable, right? It's also what drives attention. Anger. That's what the media focuses on. They're always trying to drive attention through trying to anger people. In fact, the Oxford University's word of the year, they just announced this week, was rage bait.
Yeah.
Which I guess is 2 words, but that's
about
their word
right.
of the year, rage bait.
Yeah.
They say that rage bait is the most culturally significant expression of 2025, with the phrase's usage tripling in the last 12 months. They say before, the internet was focused on grabbing our attention by sparking curiosity in exchange for clicks, but now we've seen a dramatic shift to hijacking and influencing our emotions. I would say that's very accurate. Seems
It's been
accurate,
that way
right?
for a while, not just this year.
It's not, but for whatever reason, it has just really taken off this year. I think it's been building up, and then this year we just saw it absolutely at its catalyst, rage baiting. It makes me question, have I been rage baited this year? Have you been, Micah? Our listeners, have y'all been rage baited this year on certain things? This doesn't just have to be politics. This can be all the way down to sports teams. This can be theology. Maybe you've been rage baited in a theological discussion. Things where people are trying to rise an emotion out of you, right? And it can be all these foreign policies and wars and immigration, all of that. When we are rage baited, or when we are discussing all of these big stories, I think it's crucial to remember that we have to give it all to God. And we have to remind ourselves that in all of that chaos, God is still a God of order. 1 Corinthians 14:33 says, "For God is not a God of disorder, but of peace," which I think is a great reminder. And we see it even, Micah, in the universe, which God made so orderly. Like, he created the sun and the moon and the stars to perfectly align the time and the seasons.
Yeah,
and we read that in Psalm 104:19, right? So he made us in an orderly fashion. He did it with our bodies. Our bodies do incredible things. It's truly a miracle that we operate every day, right? And in Isaiah 1:18, he says, "Come now, let us reason together, says the Lord. Though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be as white as snow."
Amen.
And that right there is the true order. That humans, we are not orderly, but we sure can strive to be. And it's so let's pray, right? That there will be order in our world, that the gospel will be heard, and that everybody will be wiped as white as snow, right? That's the only hope we can have for full order. Until then, we can't expect fallen man to have order in foreign policy and in immigration, in wars, all of that, right? Because unless he's in it, unless God is in it, us fallen humans will only continue to sow disorder. So let's pray for order today.
Love it, Connor. Yes, thanks for taking us through that. There was a ton of subjects to cover. You did a great job. Okay, so now I want to talk about the American worker in 250 years of change. So we are coming up on our 250th birthday as a country next year. So the Wall Street Journal recently laid out a 250-year picture of the American worker. And honestly, like I think it gives needed perspective. You know, God's given us this platform here, and I just wanted to share it. It just really hit me as I was reading through this. Work feels tough today. There's a lot of complaints about the job that people have they don't like. It's tough. It's hard. People are working a lot. You're having a hard time finding the exact job and marketing that you're looking for, right? But many people feel stretched and they feel pressed. But when you zoom out, the long story of American labor is nothing short of remarkable. It is nothing short of remarkable. There is an American excellence that we have experienced, and America has changed the world, and now we're the strongest, most prosperous nation in the world. And I just don't want that to get I just do not want that to get lost. And I think this is a very timely time to talk about it with all the labor numbers coming out and all of the bad news that we see about the labor market and the economy. But before we jump into this, I just want to give you a quick disclaimer because I'm going to take you from start to finish. I'm going to try to be quick. These numbers are from real sources like the Wall Street Journal, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and like historical economic data. I was on OSHA's website.
Nice.
I was on the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I was looking at census data. So anything from the 1800s is obviously more of an estimate since record keeping wasn't what it is today, but the big picture is solid and well supported. So any inferences I draw, smarter people than me already drew these inferences, and I'm giving credit to them in the show notes. So from fields to factories, this is how it started. 250 years ago, almost everyone in America worked on a farm. Almost every job was agricultural. The average workday lasted from sunrise to sunset. There was no clock watching, okay? There were no weekends. There were no labor laws whatsoever, and there was no real concept of just time off. Survival was the job. You do what you had to do to survive. The goal was to survive and to have your family survive. Then came the Industrial Revolutions. We're going to jump straight to that. Millions moved into factories. The work was exhausting. It was dangerous. 10 to 12-hour days, high injury rates. 1 in 5 kids were working full-time. Okay,
Crazy.
full-time jobs. All right. In 1913, more than 23,000 workers died on the job. Okay, in a year alone, 23,000 workers died. Today, even with a much larger workforce, a much larger nation, that number is just around 5,000 work-related deaths. It was a hard life, but America kept growing through it, kept adapting through it, and so did the pressure to make work feel safer and fairer. Okay, so then let's get into the fight for fairness. The early 1900s really changed everything. The early 1900s really set up the type of work that we see today. So workers organized, unions happened, and out of that came the building blocks of what we see in modern labor. The 8-hour workday, the weekend, okay, Saturdays are for the boys, going to church on Sunday, you know what I mean? Like that started in the early 1900s of people were actually starting to get time off. Child labor laws were enacted in the early 1900s. I don't know about you, Connor. I'm a big proponent of child labor laws. I don't think children should be working dangerous full-time jobs. But I don't want to suppose how you feel about that subject,
I
Connor.
absolutely am happy there's no child.
You feel the same.
There's some countries in this world that do not have child labor laws.
No,
and I wish they would enact them.
Many don't. Many do not. Yeah, we're very blessed to live in this country. A federal minimum wage was enacted. Safety standards were enacted that, all these large companies had to actually start to do things to ensure their workers were safe. In the 1830s, factory workers averaged 70 hours a week. By the 1890s, it was closer to 60. Today, the national average is around 34. So the national average all across the board, the hours worked is 34 hours a week. This is a 50% drop in work hours over time. And it did not happen overnight, but the trajectory is clear, right? We've been getting better at this. So is any of this surprising to you so far, Connor?
No, not. I guess I'm just always amazed by American ingenuity. First off, the fact that people had the audacity to work as long and hard as they did in the 1700s, 1800s, Industrial Revolution. And you watch these documentaries, you see a movie kind of based in that time period, and you're just amazed by what people were pulling off back then. And then it just kind of changes over time, and I'm still amazed by what we pull off. And then, I think one of the things that is so interesting about this last century was World War II and what happened there with the way that changed the work life and the amount of stuff that Americans got together and just created and built and made happen in basically no time to go towards the war effort. And that changed American work for the future as well. So I'm not entirely surprised, but I'm amazed.
Well, we are so focused on the here and now, and I think sometimes we need to zoom out and have perspective, and I think perspective changes things. I think it can change the way that we view people and situations. we're in a much better spot now than the average American was in the 1800s. Okay. All right. Let's talk about wages, living standards, and the American middle class. So now here is where the Wall Street Journal data hit the hardest, in my opinion, and like laid it out the most clearly. The typical worker today earns dramatically more than previous generations, even after adjusting for inflation. I want to give that context. In 1820, the average income was barely over $1,000 in today's dollars. Okay. By 1950, it was around 16,000. I'm talking about yearly income. Okay. 1820, around $1,000 in today's income. 1850, around 16,000 in today's income. Today, it's over $70,000. Okay. Housing, childcare, healthcare are expensive today. So I want to acknowledge that. Everyone feels that. But the long-term rise in living standards is real. Food used to swallow 40% of a family's income. Today, it's around 10. Clothing used to take 15%. Now it's around 3. Homes that once lacked plumbing and heating and having climate control and refrigeration and clean water and more safety features than early Americans could imagine. Life expectancy has doubled. Education rates exploded. Labor productivity climbed more than 400% since 1950. That does not erase the pressures of modern life and the inflation and the crunch that we all feel, but it does remind us how far we've come, and change doesn't happen just like that. Right? It's slow, it's gradual. But here's the modern shift. Today, only 1 in 10 Americans work in manufacturing, okay? But most do work in healthcare, education, tech, retail, or just office-based jobs. Work is less physical, more mental, and more digital than ever before. We have more flexibility, but there is more stress that comes with the modern American worker is asked to juggle multiple things when it used to be you did this one job in this one way. And it was very labor intensive and it was a lot of hours. So it has shifted. It's just a different kind of difficult. Remote work and AI may reshape things again. We might be standing at another turning point right now. Just like a shift from farms to factories, work changes. It always has. So in American history, we're just focusing on that. Work has always changed, and Americans have always adapted to it and thrived. So, Connor, let's talk about what is work going to look like in the next 50 years? I was just curious about that, right? With what we're seeing with AI right now, what is work going to look like in 50 years? This is where the future gets interesting. If history is a guide, work in 50 years will probably look as different from today as it looked from like 1925. Like that's the capability that AI has to change so many things. Here are a few likely shifts, and I'm not going too crazy with this. More automation and AI doing our repetitive tasks, more flexibility in where people work. I think that we're going to keep seeing that. Longer, healthy lifespans, which could extend working years. I think you're going to see people working longer and longer. Entirely new industries built around tech that we don't even know yet. Like AI is going to create industries for jobs that we do not even understand or know yet. And a continued move towards skills, specific skills over degrees. Small side note. Right? People who work in trades. There are so many good paying trades jobs, being a mechanic, working as a plumber, working as a welder. There are so many jobs open right now that I've been reading that pay very, very well. And there's just not enough skilled labor yet in the market. I think that we're going to start seeing that too. I think this, especially with AI, you're going to start seeing people move more towards skill and trade related jobs as opposed to getting another marketing degree or a communications degree. Not knocking those things. I have a type of degree like that too. Okay. So just like before, there will be fears, growing pains, and real challenges. But if the last 250 years have shown us anything so far, Connor, it is that American workers adapt, build, innovate. We move forward. The future is going to bring change, but change has always been a part of our story. It's always been a part of our story. Any thoughts before I jump into the spiritual application of this, Connor?
No, I just think it's interesting because you said AI is going to create industries we didn't even know about, and that's hard to envision right now. But I'm thinking like 5 years ago, if you said there'd be an entire like AI industry, people would think you're crazy. And now
Totally.
there are so many AI companies that are hiring up tech people all around. So it's hard to predict what's going to come. 5 years from now, there could be an industry we can't even comprehend sitting here in this moment, but we'll be talking about it 5 years from now.
Yep. I mean, there was just so many things in our nation's history. Like you think about, people thought the internet, the creation of the internet would destroy the world, the whole Y2K stuff. When the car was first invented and people stopped riding horses, people were the end is near, all that we're not going to figure this thing out. When you move from farm to factories, that's a huge deal. When you move from factories to more tech related jobs, office, that's a big change too. Why not view things glass half full? And why not say, hey, if you look at our history, we've gone through a lot of big changes, and there's something special about this country and the way that people are incentivized and able to risk to create a better life for themselves. I'm going to beat this American excellence drum as long as I possibly can, because I don't believe it really helps anything much if we're just so negative about the place that we live. You can acknowledge its difficulties, but if there isn't an underlying gratitude and a perspective that we live in a very safe, sovereign, prosperous nation, no matter where you're from, you can go out and make a better life for yourself. Obviously, there are some exceptions, but by and large, the only thing that stops you from accomplishing what you want to accomplish is you. It's not a system. It's not, and again, what I'm saying is probably pretty controversial, but I know that Connor and I are on the same page on this. I will beat that drum of why not be grateful. I think a heart of gratitude pushes us to do greater things.
We're very blessed to live here, and there's a reason so many people around the world try to get into this nation.
Still,
right? I mean, every day,
yes,
thousands of people are trying to get across our borders or fly into our nation to come work here, study here, start a business and a life here. It's incredible.
Yep, absolutely. So this all hits differently, I think, for me after Thanksgiving, Connor. It's so easy to look at our current situation and assume this is how life will always be. If things are difficult, we think it's going to stay difficult. If something feels uncertain, we imagine that uncertainty stretching out forever. We're a prisoner of our emotions. Whether if we realize it or not, you can just kind of be in this mindset of angst and really not even personally recognize it to be able to pray and pull yourself out of it. But history tells us that seasons do not stay the same. The American worker has lived through massive change, like I just covered, through progress and setbacks, through good years and hard ones. Yes, there were many bad, hard years. But in aggregate over time, we're moving up and up and up. And God has been faithful through all of it. In the mountaintops and in the valleys, your God, my God, he is faithful. Philippians 4:11 says, I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content. Amen. Psalm 100, verse 5, the Lord is good. His steadfast love endures forever. Amen. Hebrews 13:8, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Work changes. Life changes, circumstances change, but God stays the course. He stays steady on our behalf. He carries people through every season, even the ones that feel confusing or frustrating in the moment. So here's the challenge for me, for you, for everybody listening, for you too, Connor. Okay. Instead of assuming the grass is greener somewhere else or letting today's pressures define tomorrow, choose gratitude. Why not? Trust that God is working even when the path is not straight or even when you feel like you can't see it. Growth is rarely linear, but his faithfulness is. He has been faithful in the past, he is faithful today, and he will, that's a promise, he will be faithful in the future.
Amen to that. He's always faithful. And that includes in work, that includes in, everything we talked about in the first part of this podcast, everything. Again, he's a God of order.
He's also been faithful to our nation. He's been faithful to our country, and I pray and hope and believe that's going to keep happening, no matter all the difficulties we're experiencing right now.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, we always pray for revival in our nation, right?
Well, that's the most important thing.
A massive spiritual revival here, because that's what puts a lot of things in the right direction.
That's really what would change things. What would change things. Yeah.
Which, we're seeing signs of something happening. No, something's in the water. So continue to pray.
We have covered that extensively.
Speak into that.
And we will keep covering that. We're praying every day, and the ministry that we get to serve at, we want to be a part of a revival taking place. It's in our founding documents as
it is.
Yeah, as an organization. Like, we want to leverage digital technology and this digital world, AI, all these different things to bring about revival, true repentant revival, and a turning to Jesus.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, as you were talking through this whole thing, I was thinking about an article. I think I saw it yesterday or 2 days ago. Wall Street Journal, New York Times, somewhere. It was talking about how dress and work attire has changed over the last, it was doing the last century.
Well, that's interesting.
And
I didn't read
everything
that
you
one.
just talked about, it was very interesting. It was talking about how, it was very formal, especially post World War II. Everybody came in suits. Men used to be required to wear hats to the office in the 1920s and 30s. That's
Which
why
is
you always see them
crazy
with
because now
hats.
wearing a hat is viewed as not as professional.
Not as
So
professional
it's
or
flipped.
more, but and that's where it went. It was very formal. You wore suit and tie. Women you wore very formal dresses to work, and then over the decades it got less formal, and now we're wherever we are now, which is just some people wear very
Show
casual
up
wear to the
clothed,
office.
basically. Just wear
Essentially,
clothes is where we are right now.
yeah, it's kind of funny. But it's just one of those things that is a telltale sign of where our culture has gone and how work has changed. Which part of that's just a lot of people's work sits at a computer now, so you want to be more comfortable.
It's a part
kind
of
interesting.
evolving. Yeah.
Part of evolving. Michael, we love, as we always say, hearing from our listeners. We love it when you guys send us stuff. You can always email us at culturebrief@denisinforum.org or shoot us a message on Instagram at culturebriefpodcast. Wanted to read this incredible message we got from Brian. Brian sent us a message on Instagram, and I thought this is great. He was very open with us and said we could share this on this show. I think it's good perspective. Brian said, I have an interesting background. Immigration topics have been tough to hear on channels like CNN or Fox. I immigrated illegally to the U.S. at age 4 and was raised by loving immigrant parents who are devout Christians. At 16, I got a deferred action for childhood arrivals residency, which let me work and study. I earned my undergraduate degree and master's degree at a Christian university, and I now work in banking. I wanted to share my story to convey my main message, which is to say thank you for encouraging compassion and empathy in the immigration discussion. It's been hard recently to hear how people talk about immigrants, even those who don't know my background. I lean conservative, but feel politically homeless. But thankfully, my identity is in Jesus.
Amen.
Man.
Yeah.
Brian, thank you for sending that.
Yeah, Brian, that means a lot to us, man. I think Connor and I would both agree that has been, obviously we started this podcast nearly a year ago, and it's been such a blessing. But I mean, ever since Trump has come into office, immigration has been one of the top 2 or 3 things that we're going to talk about when it comes to anything political. And that is consistently the most difficult discussion that Connor and I have. Not like disagreeing with each other or whatever, but just trying to handle that of understanding a nation needs rules and laws and borders. We believe that, and we believe there's biblical context for that. But at the same time, every single person is created in the image of God. And so as a believer, there is an American versus somebody from another country. We are the same. We are all created and in a way that allows us to magnify and glorify God. We've been gifted in specific ways. And so we have to remember that as believers, we can't just let the political part of it, the rule of law part of it, dictate exactly what we believe on this subject, because every person is created in the image of God. Therefore, they have dignity and they're worthy of respect. And we will keep banging that drum. But it has been a difficult topic to cover. And so, Brian, we really thank you, man. That means a lot to us because we really have tried to balance it and handle it with grace.
Yeah, we have. And I'm grateful he sent this in too, because I think it gives perspective to the stories of so many immigrants who, the news is always focusing on people who came here illegally and do crimes or crossing the border at an age that they understand. But I mean, Brian came here as a child. I would say, that's just something that a lot of people forget, is stories like this where, Brian, you're doing great work, man. It's awesome. It's cool to see that you have really got a solid job. You've got your degrees. That's awesome.
Yeah,
and
man.
I think there's a lot
Bless
of
you,
people in
brother.
similar shoes like that. And we have to remember those types of stories too when we talk about immigration. So thanks, Brian, for sending that. And we'll continue to talk about that and just see where, this Trump administration and government goes with all the immigration stuff going down the road. Okay, Michael, let's jump into check-in real fast. We got several things that have been happening. One, I know you want to give an update on the Dells.
I do, yeah. So the Dell family gave $6.25 billion to U.S. children. Let me break that down a little bit. So they gave a gift, and it'll give about 25 million U.S. children roughly a $250 deposit into a new investment account for each child, with the program launching July 4th, 2026. July 4th, 2026 is the 250th anniversary of our nation's founding. God bless America. Children born from 2025 through 2028 will also receive an additional $1,000 in government-funded deposits. We talked about this. These are the Trump accounts. The money stays invested until each child turns 18, when it can be used for education, a first home, or starting a business. And, the Dell family kind of put out this statement about, how each child just needs a seed and needs the ability to build something for the future. I think this is incredible. I think this is so cool that extreme wealth like this, that, some people are like, why do you need all that money? It's actually being leveraged for something that's not selfish. It's being leveraged for the future of this country. I just thought that was really cool that they did that. To just spend that this is going to impact, 25 million children. That's a whole lot of kids. That's our future. That's amazing.
This is one of the biggest donations ever made, I believe. Definitely towards a government-funded thing. The Dells, of course, Dell Technology, Dell Computers. That's where that wealth comes from. Michael Dell is worth, I think, $150 billion. So this
very cool, man.
Kind of a drop in the bucket for him, but also a large amount of money. So just
props to the Dell family, man.
Yeah,
Love
it's cool. Something else, the box office, man. It was tough in the fall, man. October was really bad. Lowest October in history besides the COVID year 2020. Only $445 million was collected. And so people were freaking out in Hollywood. But then came the Thanksgiving holiday, and we saw two massive movies come in. I'm sure many of you listeners went and saw these films. I don't know, Micah, if you took your girls to see either Wicked for Good or Zootopia 2, but those movies... Man, they blew everything up. Wicked for Good.
I'm part of the problem. I haven't seen a movie in a while. When the new Top Gun comes out, I'll go see that.
That's probably 5-6 years away from now.
Well, I'll go eventually.
Hopefully theaters still exist by then. If there's weeks like this, it'll continue, because Wicked for Good brought in $270 million, and Zootopia 2 has brought in $156 million just since last Wednesday. So that's good news. As I thought this was interesting. The New York Times Hollywood reporter Brooks Barnes wrote that the message film goers seem to be sending to studios is once again saying, give us energetic fantasies that allow us to escape the challenges of the real world, and we will come. They need to focus on movies like this that allow people to go and have fun in the theater.
That's a good point.
Like Top Gun, right? Like, enjoy the movies, not just feel like a Debbie Downer every time you go to see a film.
It's a good point, especially from the New York Times too. You saw, and we've covered this extensively, there has just been such a leftward shift in all media created for a while, where you felt like you couldn't see a movie or watch a TV show without being preached at for some political opinion. And I think that was just kind of grinding on people. And that's kind of what movies are. Like, especially when you go to a theater, it provides an escape. Gives you a couple hours where you're thrust into a completely different world and not thinking about your problems. And, I think escaping too much is a problem, but I don't think there's anything wrong with just taking a brain break. I think it's great.
Seeing Jason Bateman voice a rabbit and just do
that's
his
right.
thing
Wait,
in Zootopia.
what? In Zootopia?
Yeah. That's Bateman, bro.
Oh, wow. I do love Jason Bateman. That's great.
Maybe a little Disney Plus action.
Wait a minute.
Else?
You said Jason Bateman?
Yeah.
Okay. At first I thought you said Jason Statham. See, don't you think that would be weird if Jason Statham was in Zootopia?
Yeah, that would be a little weird. But honestly, because
Jason Bateman makes more sense.
He'd play the bad guy in the
yeah. But Jason Statham in a cartoon? Okay,
that'd be crazy. Something else. College football, dude. Lane Kiffin. We mentioned it at the top. He's at LSU. The coaching carousel is crazy. The playoffs are down the road. We got the conference championships this weekend. If you're a big college football fan, I know you'll be watching those. A lot still at play with trying to get the last few seeds in that college football playoff bracket. But man, Micah, any just initial thoughts on just the chaos down there in the South?
It's been wild, man. Louisiana? What I've been paying most attention to is just all the coaching hires. It's just been a carousel. Like, so many big jobs have been open, like SEC, like larger jobs, LSU, Auburn,
Penn State,
Kentucky.
Bro.
Kentucky was open. Now it's filled. Oklahoma State, Penn State, Virginia Tech. What else? What else am I missing?
Right before we hopped on this, I saw the Kansas State coach is retiring.
So I didn't even see that.
UCLA.
Ole Miss was open because Lane Kiffin left Ole Miss for LSU. So just crazy. And we're seeing how money plays into this. Like, Lane Kiffin's reason that he gave, like, he's kind of known as being somewhat of a selfish guy, but he operates well in this NIL world, and I do think he's a good coach. He basically was like, it wasn't about the salary for me. I mean, the salary difference between Ole Miss and LSU is very little, but he was given a promise and has a better understanding that I will have more money to spend on players at LSU than at Ole Miss. cash is king in order to build a better team. And so, as when we have covered NIL, that is going to become more prominent in college sports. And you can say, I mean, that really kind of feels like that's like ruining the good thing about college athletics. But it's too late. We're already too deep. Hopefully there's some changes and some legislation that takes place that can stop a coach from leaving a team when they're about to go to the college football playoff, thus almost ruining that team's chances. I don't know, man. That was a weird situation with Lane Kiffin, but we could talk about that for a while. Let's jump into TuneIn. Just have one update for you here. So make sure to listen to this week's Faith and Clarity episode. So that is our Big Brother podcast in the Denison Forum podcast network, Faith and Clarity with Dr. Mark Turman. He's been so gracious to us. We love working with Mark. He's a very wise person. He hosts a podcast. So Connor joined Dr. Mark Turman and Josh Miller to discuss cloning and gene editing, holiday loneliness, and the rising church attendance among younger generations. They covered all that and a lot more. So all these things will be linked in the show notes, or just search for the Faith and Clarity podcast on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. That was a fun conversation. It was wide-ranging, and yeah, gene editing is crazy, so go listen to that.
Yeah.
And guys, thank you all so much for joining us on Culture Brief, a Denison Forum podcast, and all articles, videos, anything that we mentioned will be posted in the show notes, even the link to that podcast episode, anything else that we mentioned. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and rate or review the show, and share it with a friend, and we will see you next Thursday.